Hi guys, welcome back to the channel FPL Consult here, and in today's video I'm going to share with you guys 3 variations of a Game Week 3 wildcard, specifically one with Haaland only, another with Salah only, and then one with both Salah and Haaland. So this video should be useful for those of you guys on a Game Week 3 wildcard. Before we jump into all these drafts, I do want to also speak about some things that I would consider myself before building a Game Week 3 wildcard. Hopefully you guys enjoy this video, and if you do, please do drop a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here. So before we jump into the video, I do want to mention that I've really enjoyed interacting with all of you guys a lot more in the comments section, because most of my videos recently have seen more comments and I've enjoyed interacting with you guys on a slightly deeper level. So I'm gonna try something different in today's video where I would reply to every single comment made within the first 24 hours of the video. So if you're watching this video within the first day of release and you haven't commented and you have a question, feel free to drop it in the comments down below and I'll guarantee to reply you as well. Now, let's take a look at some things to consider on a Game Week 3 wildcard, and the first thing I would keep at the back of my mind is that the Premier League transfer window closes on Friday, the 30th of August. So essentially this is one day before the Game Week 3 deadline, and that is good news because come Friday what we see is what we get. No more players can enter Premier League clubs after Friday. And that definitely helps us narrow down the picks that we want to go for. And obviously those rumors that we hear about Anthony Gordon being linked to Liverpool or Eddie Nketiah being linked to Crystal Palace, all this will come to light by Friday. But the second point here that I have is that players can still be sold after the deadline, after 30th of August. Now I call this out because Ivan Toney is heavily linked to Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia's transfer window closes only on the 6th of October. So even if he's not sold before the Premier League transfer window deadline, he can still be sold to Saudi Arabia after the deadline. And I think it is worth considering because many of us are looking at Mbeumo as a pick to go for on a Game Week 3 wildcard. So definitely something to consider. But I think he is also being linked to Chelsea now, who have made a last-minute bid for him. And if he does move to Chelsea, I think that helps us because it would have to be before Friday the 30th of August. So we'll see what happens there, but he will obviously impact Mbeumo's, appeal as an FPL asset. Now, aside from that, looking at a big picture view in terms of a Game Week 3 wildcard, I think the dilemma that we had at the start of the season still remains in a Game Week 3 wildcard, and I foresee it remaining for the rest of the season as well. Do we keep going with a single premium draft, or do we kind of consider going for a Salah plus Haaland draft? Is that something that we can go for on a Game Week 3 wildcard? Now, I've kind of asked myself this question, and kind of why I've made 3 different variations of wildcards for Game Week 3 is that I think there's reason to go for all these 3 variations, but I also do want to call out the fact that Salah plus Haaland drafts right now seem to be a little bit more viable than they were at the start of the season. And the reason why I say this is because all the enablers have shown themselves in the first 2 game weeks. Morgan Rogers looks really good, 5 million only. The 5.5 million kind of enablers in midfield have also shown themselves. Minte from Brighton looks good. Emil Smith-Rowe is someone that's popping up in many drafts as well. Even Antoine Semenyo from Bournemouth, some people are considering him as well. All the enablers have kind of shown themselves. And in such a situation, maybe Salah plus Haaland is really a decent consideration given that there are cheap options available to us. So kind of think about, I would say when I look at considering Salah only, Haaland only, or Salah plus Haaland, I think about who I want to captain in each of these game weeks moving forward. And for me, because in Game Week 3 and Game Week 4 at least, it's still Haaland being the best captain, I still think it's worth to go for a Haaland only draft first and then move from there. Either that or a Salah plus Haaland draft. I don't think I'll be going for a Salah only draft basically. But many differing opinions on this. Let me know what you think about it in the comments down below. Aside from that, Aston Villa have the best fixtures. Now, many people have already been screaming about their fixtures come Game Week 3, and it's just really, really good. But I think bear in mind as well that the Champions League games start in the middle of Game Week 4 to Game Week 5. So basically after Game Week 4, the midweek before Game Week 5, the first round of the Champions League matches start. We will have to see how Aston Villa adapt to playing in Europe. We already saw a couple seasons back where Newcastle were in the Champions League and they were a really strong team before that, but because of Europe, a lot of players got injured, maybe their squad depth was not good enough, and therefore we kind of saw their performance in the Premier League crumble as well. So kind of tailoring our expectations a little bit there. Aston Villa could also face that same kind of scenario, but the good thing is that for this run coming up, the fixtures are there for them. The last point I want to mention here before you look at the drafts is, I may butcher his name. I hope I don't, because I will have to keep pronouncing his name quite a bit in the next few sections. I think it's Nedeljkovic, so I will say Nedeljkovic, and if I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments down below. But he is coming up as a very popular enabler. He is 4.0 million. Medicash has an hamstring injury that is going to keep him out for 1 week. So being at 4.0 million and from an Aston Villa defense that looks pretty decent, to be honest, the way they play against Arsenal kind of felt as if they could have gotten away with something, but they still lost 2-0, but their numbers look good. And I would say that the reason why Nedeljkovic is popular is because it seems as if he would be taking over Cash in that right back position. But I say be careful with him because there are variations of that Aston Villa defense that we can see happening moving forward, which is Konza moving to right back and Diego Carlos slotting into centre back. Now, a lot of people have kind of hopped on how hot Nedeljkovic is as an enabler, but I would just tend to be slightly more careful. I'm not saying that you shouldn't go for him. I also do think he will continue to start at least the next 2 to 3 games, but just having that other option of that Konza slotting in to right back and then Carlos going into centre back, that just makes me think that it is a rotation that Unai Emery could go for if Nedeljkovic does not perform. So things to bear in mind. Again, this whole section here is just big picture things on what we need to think about when we go into a Game Week 3 wildcard. But aside from that, with all this in mind, let's take a look at the Game Week 3 wildcard drafts. So I want to start with the draft that I'm most likely to go with if I was on a Game Week 3 wildcard, and it is the Haaland only variation here. So there's no Salah. I've spread his money around, but there is a route to get Salah by Game Week 5, which is when you would likely want to captain him when Erling Haaland has Arsenal. So let's take a look and break down this draft. Keepers wise, I've gone with Flekken and Valdemarsson. A bit of a spoiler is that all 3 drafts will have Flekken and Valdemarsson as the keeper pairing, simply because I think Brentford's long-term fixtures are very good. Southampton now in Game Week 3. Yes, Game Week 4, Game Week 5 are slightly tougher for Brentford, but aside from that, from Game Week 6 onwards is a really good run for quite a bit of time, and that is the kind of runway that you would need when you are wildcarding this early, because the next wildcard only comes to you after the midway point of the season, after Game Week 19. So looking at the long term, I think Flekken and Valdemarsson just make so much sense. And then when we take a look at the defense, I have gone for Trent, Saliba and Robinson here. On the bench, it's Konza and Greaves. Now, talking about Trent first, I still do think like the fixtures are there for him in the next few. Yes, in Game Week 3 is Manchester United, but can he get something here? I think possibly an attacking return. He has been due for quite a while. The numbers that he's been putting up is quite decent as well. So I think Trent is still a mainstay in the team. He is quite expensive, but I think looking at the way Liverpool are defending right now, he does justify that. For Saliba, I have gone with him here because simply you would want to be tripled up on Arsenal by Game Week 6. Now, so at least you need one Arsenal player, so I've gone for Saliba here just because I think he's more nailed than Gabriel, and you don't want to be making a swap from Gabriel to Saliba further down the line. So I think when you're looking at a longer horizon, Saliba is the one that I would go for. Speaking a bit on Arsenal as well, there isn't any other Arsenal asset than Saliba, but the reason for that is because I'm kind of wanting to dodge their Game Week 4 and Game Week 5 fixtures. After that, I think you start to load up on them. So bear in mind that if you go for this draft, you will have to load up on Arsenal players by Game Week 6. Now, aside from that, there's Robinson as well. Good fixtures for him. Fulham fixtures are still very, very good. There's Robinson here, and there is also another Fulham asset that I'll speak about in the midfield. So, talking about the 2 bench options in the defenders first, before we go into the midfield, there's Konza and Greaves. Now, Greaves is just the 4.0 enabler that I've chosen to go for, simply because Ipswich run of fixtures, they are actually second on the fixture ticker, and Aston Villa is top. So I know they're not a very strong defense, but if there is a game week where you need to use Greaves, I don't think you would find yourself in a situation where he has a really bad fixture, because the ticker shows that they are quite high up the fixture ticker and basically have a good run. So Greaves is just here as an enabler. For Konza, he has Leicester away. The thing with Konsa here is that I put him on the bench, but you can very simply start him ahead of Robinson if you do think like the clean sheet for Konsa is more likely than Robinson keeping a clean sheet or even getting attacking returns. I've gone for Konsa here and not Nedeljkovic simply because I did mention that there are risks involved with Nedeljkovic, and I think if you already have money, you start with 100 million and this team value is only 99.5. So I do think that some of you may have money left over, and why not go for a safer pick? So I've gone for Konsa here as the 4.5 bench option for a defender, but very well he would be coming into the team for majority of the game weeks when especially Robinson has tough fixtures. So that's the defenders. For midfield, I've gone with Rogers, Jota, Mbeumo, Smith Rowe, and Cole Palmer. Now, I'll speak about the enablers first in Rogers and Smith Rowe. Now, simply, I think both of them at that particular price point are some of the best assets to own. Rogers at 5 million is kind of a no-brainer here. With Aston Villa's fixtures and him playing 2 games of 90 minutes in the first 2 game weeks, I think he is just a player that is locked in for most of the wildcards that we're going to see here. And Emil Smith Rowe at 5.5 million, there are other players you could go for here, but him kind of showing what he is capable of in game week 2 and having an Ipswich fixture here away in game week 3, I do think like this is a fixture we could see him score in as well. The only thing with Smith Rowe is that I would like to see his minutes kind of increase to maybe the 75 to 80th minute mark. But if not, I also see them progressively increasing his minutes and he could get there soon. And I think that the sharpness that he's shown and the goal that he scored against Leicester is a sign of things to come. So at 5.5 million, he's the one I'm going for. There are other players you could consider at this bracket. Semenyo, 5.5 as well. I think other players that like Minte as well, but Brighton do have Arsenal in game week 3, so probably not a time to target Brighton assets. So I think Smith Rowe just makes sense here as an enabler. The other options that I've gone for here, the mid-priced ones, is Jota and Mbeumo. So for Jota, the thinking behind him is that if you don't have Salah, I think you still have to have one Liverpool asset, and Jota just seems to be the starting centre forward for now. He is not playing the full games, and Darwin Núñez has started to get minutes as well. So has Cody Gakpo, but Cody Gakpo is kind of playing more towards the left, replacing Luis Diaz. So I think direct competition-wise, it's probably Jota and Núñez, and I still think like Jota is first choice for there. So at least for the next few game weeks, I think it's still fine to have Jota in the team, and that's why he's here at 7.5 million. For Mbeumo, the thinking behind going for him, despite having a bad run of game week 4 and 5 fixtures, is that from game week 6 onwards is really good. So you're hopping early now, and there is a rotation that works really well with João Pedro, who's on the bench. Because Mbeumo is Southampton now in game week 3, João Pedro is Arsenal, so you very well bench João Pedro. Game week 4 and game week 5, when it's tough fixtures for Mbeumo, you start João Pedro, who has Ipswich and Nottingham Forest. So a perfect rotation there, and then come game week 6 onwards, you can continue to start Mbeumo. So I think the appeal, again, for Mbeumo really comes if Ivan Toney leaves. So do bear that in mind when you are making your drafts all the way up till the deadline. Hopefully we get some confirmation of whether Toney is leaving or not. Now, moving on to the last midfielder is Cole Palmer. Now, at 10.5 million, he is very expensive, but you look at his performance in game week 2, you can see the role that he's being used in. I don't think he'll play the number 10 position every single game week, but there are so many analysis being done on how the Chelsea system actually suits Cole Palmer being played at number 10. You're banking on the fact here that going for him, I don't think a lot of people would be in a position where they can go for Cole Palmer unless they sell someone like Saka, but I don't see a reason why people would sell Saka now. So if you're on a wild card, I think you could very well jump on this kind of a differential bit of an asset that I don't think a lot of people would be going for. And I do think like Cole Palmer, because he is on penalties as well, he is another captaincy option for game week 3. I have kept the captain's armband on Haaland for now, but Crystal Palace at home is a good fixture for Cole Palmer. And aside from that, he is your route because he's at 10.5 million. He is your route to Mo Salah later on. He is also your route to Saka later on if you wish to get Saka back come game week 6. So Palmer here, I would also always have a premium midfielder, as I've mentioned at the start of the season as well. Very important to nail the price points. So Palmer here as a premium midfielder allows you to move around the premium mids easily. Now up front, it's Watkins and Erling Haaland. Erling Haaland is the captain. against West Ham away. I have him here simply because he is still the best captain for Game Week 3 and Game Week 4, but there are plans to move him on later on, come Game Week 5, when he has Arsenal and Salah has Bournemouth. So that would be a move. Haaland down to a cheaper forward, and thereafter going for Salah with all the money that you'll have later on. Maybe Jota to Salah is a move that can be considered as well. So there we go. With this draft. The last player I haven't spoken about is Ollie Watkins. So this one here is a bit of a gamble. The reason why I say it is a gamble is because Ollie Watkins has only been playing 60-ish minutes in both of the first 2 game weeks, so he is definitely not up to speed. He is also going to be likely playing in the Champions League soon, come Game Week 4, Game Week 5. I think he's still a starter. I don't see Unai Emery starting Duran ahead of Watkins in the Champions League. So you add that all together, maybe his appeal in the Premier League is not that great, but I still think like with the amount of chances that he's getting, even in the first 2 game weeks, and bear in mind against Arsenal as well, he had 2 clear-cut chances. On his day, he puts it away. So it's a matter of getting back to fitness and getting sharp again. And I think with time to come, you are building a Game Week 3 wildcard for the long term. In time to come, he would get there. So you are kind of going early here for Watkins, Leicester away. The fixtures again are there for him, and I still think he starts every single game. So bank on the fact that he would kind of get returns here on a Game Week 3 wildcard. I would pretty much do that if I was on a wildcard. So there we go with this draft. This is my 15-man squad for a Haaland-only draft, which I'm more likely to go for if I was on a wildcard. But let's take a look at the Salah-only variation for you guys who are considering it. So looking at the Salah-only draft now, there has really only been 4 changes made to this draft, and one of them is on the bench as well. So let's focus on the 3 main changes in the 11 first before I speak about the one on the bench, and that is to do Jota to Salah, which is the first move here. Simply why I've done this is because I don't see a need for us to triple up on Liverpool in Game Week 3 when they have Manchester United away. And also, I don't think with the plethora of options available to us that there's a need to triple up on them. So I've done Jota to Salah. And in order to get the money for this, I've downgraded Haaland to Muniz. Now, Muniz I've gone for because I still think like the cheaper striker positions wise, Fulham's fixtures are still one of the better ones. And Muniz has been putting up decent numbers. I guess he's been pretty unlucky not to get a couple of returns in the first few game weeks, but with the fixtures that they have, I do think he's someone that could be getting returns soon. And with the fact that I've gone with Muniz here, I don't see a need to keep Emile Smith-Rowe anymore because I would then be tripled up on Fulham. So what I've done is I've sold Emile Smith-Rowe to Saka. So this basically prepares me to triple up on Arsenal come Game Week 6, which I think the previous Haaland-only draft may find it slightly trickier because we're only starting that Haaland-only draft with one Arsenal player in Saliba. But for this one, because you've sold Emile Smith-Rowe to Saka, you basically have 2 Arsenal players already, and you potentially can keep Saliba and Saka through all the way until Game Week 6. So there we go with this kind of starting 11 here for the Salah-only draft. And the captain is Saka instead of Palmer, but obviously, depending on which one you prefer, you can go with them. Both of them are on penalties as well. I just would tend to favor the better attack, which is Arsenal, and also the kind of the more stable attack as well. In terms of the last change that was made to this draft compared to the Haaland-only draft, it is going for Nedeljkovic instead of Konza. Now, if you do have enough money, because the reason why I've done this move is to keep the team value to 99.6 or below 100 million so that it's affordable. But if you have a slightly higher team value and can afford to keep Konza here, then do so, because I don't see a reason why you would go for a more risky asset if Konza is already available to you with the money that you have. So I would do that, but if not, if you don't have enough money, maybe you're priced out of certain moves, then Nedeljkovic here is fine as an enabler on the bench as well. So this is my variation of the Salah-only draft, adapted slightly from the Haaland-only draft. And now let's take a look at the Salah plus Haaland draft. Now looking at the Salah plus Haaland draft, this one looks quite different as compared to the previous 2 single premium drafts that we've looked at, simply because I think the bench is very, very thin. Now, if you're going for Salah and you're going for Haaland, something has to give here. So I've really dropped the budget on the bench down to a minimum. So you simply have Nedeljkovic here, 4.0 million for Aston Villa. You do know the risks involved with him. There's also Jebison from Bournemouth, but I don't think he's a starter. Evan Nilsson is the starting striker for Bournemouth, but he's 4.5 million. And then for Greaves as well, he's 4 million. So you simply have the bench, which is the minimum value there, and all your money is in this starting 11. So really not a very flexible squad structure in terms of rotation. You may be in trouble if some players get injured, but you can obviously transfer them out. But aside from that, let's take a look at the 11 players here. In terms of goalkeepers as well as defenders, nothing much has changed. So it's really the midfield here and the forwards. So in midfield, Rodgers and Smith Rowe still stay. Palmer is also someone that I've decided to keep in the Salah plus Haaland draft. Looking at aside from Salah, because obviously this is Salah and Haaland draft, it will have Salah. It's Eze that I've gone for here instead of Mbeumo. Now the reason why I've gone for this is because yes, he has Chelsea away in game week 3. But I think when you are playing a player that needs to, or you're choosing a player that needs to play for the foreseeable future, at least the next, 2 to 3 game weeks until you decide that you want to do Mbeumo in for Eze, for example. If you need this player to start the next few, I rather go for Eze instead of Mbeumo, because Mbeumo has a tough game week 4 and 5 fixture and you can't rotate him with anyone on your bench. So Eze here has Chelsea away, but in game week 4, game week 5, it's better fixtures for him than they are for Mbeumo. So I would go for Eze here despite this tough fixture. And to be fair, Eze has been quite unlucky. In game week 1, he got a disallowed goal. And in game week 2, he hit the post as well. Numbers wise, he's been taking some of the most shots of any midfielder and just not converting. So very unlucky there. I think returns are still to come for Eberechi Eze. And I do think going for him here just makes sense if you need to start someone week in, week out for the next 2 to 3. Right, and then up front, Haaland is there because this again is a Salah and Haaland draft. But then I have João Pedro here because I can't go for Ollie Watkins anymore. There's not enough money. So much budget is stuck in Haaland and Salah that I have to start João Pedro, who is a player that you look at the single premium drafts that I've gone for previously. João Pedro is on the bench because he has Arsenal away. But if you want to go for Salah and Haaland, something has to give. Cheap bench essentially means you need to start João Pedro here against Arsenal and hope for something. The good thing obviously in this draft is that you have the two best assets in FPL right now, which is Haaland and Salah. Some may argue that Palmer is up there or even maybe Saka is up there. But in terms of premium wise, you have both Salah and Haaland. So there are compromises to be made. Again, as I've said, when you're going for a game week 3 kind of wild card, the deliberation is always still whether to go for a single premium or a double premium draft. The only thing I would say is that the enablers are a lot more certain, which I've already mentioned at the start. Rodgers and Smith Rowe are great enablers. João Pedro at 5.5 for Brighton is also a great player to have. So I guess with all these players coming up, this draft is still viable because when I look at it overall, if I have to start this team week in, week out, Flecken, Trent, Saliba, Robinson in defense is pretty decent. In midfield, it's Rodgers, Salah, Eze, Smith Rowe, Palmer. None of them kind of scream out to me as players that I would need to be worried about week in, week out. Then up front is João Pedro and Haaland. So I see the appeal for this. It's just that personally, I prefer a bit more rotation that's available to me to be adaptable to potential injuries, for example, or suspensions. And yeah, I would just go for a single game week wildcard. A single premium wildcard. But let me know where you are in terms of single premiums, double premiums, and which kind of these variations of the drafts you prefer. And if there are different players that you've gone for in each of these variations, players that I'm sleeping on, please let me know down in the comments below as well. But if not, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. And if you did, please do drop a like. Please do subscribe as well. Again, thank you very much for all the support that you guys have been showing the channel recently. We have been growing quite a bit. So thank you very much. And do drop a comment as well because I will be replying to every single comment made within the first 24 hours of this video. So there we go. I will catch you guys in tomorrow's video where we will be doing the stats breakdown.